All right, folks, welcome back to our trailgating coverage pre-race interview with three-time podium finisher here, twice in the long race, once at CCC, the Sierra Samurai from Mammoth Lakes, California. Tim Tollefson in the building. Big round of applause, Tim Tollefson. What's up, bro? How are you feeling ahead of your 9th UTMB?
I'm really grateful to be here. We'll start with that. It's, I think with anyone when you're targeting these races, a lot emotionally and physically goes into it, and there's no guarantee that you actually show up at the start line healthy. And I feel like I'm just kind of skirting that line perfectly this year. So I'm pumped to be here and not falling apart.
Yeah, and we were just saying, probably the most experienced guy in the field. This is your 10th year here. On our Top 10 Storylines show, we showed the photograph of all of us, myself, yourself, Zach Miller, Dave Laney, Topher Gaylord, Katrine Poletti.
Yeah.
Maybe, and again, we were also talking about just the memory of you guys coming up over the top of the Grand Col Ferret. Zach Miller wins CCC. You finish second. Really kicks off this chapter of Americans coming over here and doing so successfully. And you really led that charge. So maybe just like reflect on the past decade and what this event has meant to your career.
It's been fascinating to kind of to look back over the last 10 years because UTMB has provided me like career defining moments and also just like earth shattering lows that like I did not deal well with. But I do credit this event in particular for really kickstarting my professional career. And I think the same could be said for Zach and Laney as well. And arguably like Laney and I joked that, our success back in like 2015, 16, 17, like we've been riding our own coattails for the last like 8 years because, as the sport gets harder, as, our bodies fail, it's amazing that there are moments of time that kind of get cemented and imprinted in the backs of people's memories. And I think that, 2015, 16, 17 era are some of those where when you talk to someone about UTMB, often if you were to ask them their entry point to the sport, they could be traced back to maybe Billy Yang's Mont Blanc film of 2015, or maybe that, historically deep field of 2017 that you and I battled out with one another. And I think that definitely gave UTMB exposure in North America that it didn't have prior, where obviously the race has been around since 2003, but admittedly in North America, like we had Hard Rock, we had Western States, we had like Sonoma 50, we had TNF 50, like our focus was on those races. And it's like, oh yeah, there are some things that happen over there in France, but it wasn't really maybe until about that 2015, 16 timeframe that like Americans really started to take note of this race.
What do you think made you so successful out of the gate? Because we'll obviously talk about the times when the race has been less kind to you, but 3 years on the podium in a row, 15, 16, 17, again, once in CCC, then twice at UTMB. But you bring up Zach, right? He won CCC on debut, but then it took him years to figure out UTMB until finally he got it right in 2023. It took him many, many years. What do you think made you successful out of the gate? Was it just the period in your career? And
I think it was a multifaceted thing, but partly I was obsessively focused on this event only. So I would target my entire season towards UTMB and erase everything else. I'd say no to opportunities where I would not race basically until UTMB. I may have an early season, March, April, May, but I wouldn't do anything in the summer other than train. So it was sort of an uninterrupted block of 8 to 12 weeks of very specific training for this race particularly. And I think that real kind of focused obsession gave me an opportunity when mixed with a mindset of I was stubborn, I had an axe to grind, and I wanted to kind of prove the world wrong. And that, I think, is a dangerous combination, and a young, healthy body. And so when all those things aligned, I think it allowed me to unlock potential at this race. And then, some of the subsequent years, one of those three variables would kind of be out of place and I'd be forcing it and not being honest with myself that I wasn't ready to take the start, or, I wasn't strong enough to not take the start line. Right. And I would actually just line up because there was expectations, there were pressure, sponsor obligations, and kind of just got caught up in the momentum and almost the machine of the UTMB complex and felt like I couldn't get off the ride.
Say more about that, because we were just talking about how it has been a polarized experience for you now with 9 years here, 3 podiums and 5 DNFs.
Yeah.
And so I guess, yeah, you've already sort of mentioned it, but the things that you got right early, like what was missing then in the years when you didn't make it all the way around? Because you also did have a hard fought finish where, I mean, what was that? 2021?
2023, I finally closed the loop again, but it was 26 and a half hours. I think, I mean, there was and also this kind of speaks to just ultra in general. The first couple of years, that youthful naivete, I think serves you well. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how bad it would be. And then I think as my career progressed, I had looked behind the curtain and I knew what it would take. And I think there were moments where I was too afraid to accept what I would have to do to be successful again, because I didn't want to go to that place anymore. And then in 2018, which I think was probably the year that I was the fittest, I just had a freak accident and fell and had a helicopter life flight out of there, which
sliced your leg open.
Yeah. And so I think there's just kind of you show up enough times and you're bound to have some goose eggs. And, I plan on ending kind of this 10-year, terror with UTMB with one final loop this year. And I've decided that it will be my last one. I won't come back.
Okay. So that's exactly where I wanted to go next. I mean, you'd sort of suggested this as we've talked about it throughout the year, just you and I talking one-on-one. Tell the people about the thought that goes into that, like, because that feels like a very intentional decision. Like, all right, I'm going back one more time and then I'm closing the chapter.
Absolutely. I've used that word obsessed a lot, but I definitely, like, this race kind of consumed me for years, and to the point where, compromised relationships kind of felt like I put my life on hold, really kind of gave everything I could to it. And sometimes it gave back and sometimes it took a lot more than it gave me. And I think I've just kind of appreciated and recognized now that it just doesn't excite me anymore. Obviously I would love to win the race, but there's nothing that I really want out of this race anymore. I've changed a lot in the last 10 years. This race has changed a lot in the last 10 years. And I think that, it makes sense that this could be kind of the natural kind of endpoint where it's been an amazing chapter. But if I get excited to do mountain races in the future, like, there's so many other events that I would love to target, but I'm also kind of at the point in my career where I don't know how many more I really have in me. Like, I've been going hard for 25 plus years. And I think that my mind is starting to kind of wear down in terms of, like, do I want to put in what it takes? And then this season, I end up with, like, an amazing last 6-week block where it's like, oh yeah, I do want it, but it comes in waves. And so that's where I'm excited to be here in the Valley, healthy. And my mind is more in that, like, 2017, 2018 range where I have an axe to grind. I have something to prove. I want to, middle finger to the world and be like, no, I'm still here. But it also is like, I just don't need it as much as I used to. And so, yeah, I think it's just time to move on. It's
time.
It's been fun also, just, like, I don't know, mentoring the younger athletes, especially some of the guys on the craft team, or the women, and then just in the sport in general, talking to people and seeing, like Rod, we've talked about, where seeing the sport through his eyes at Western States has been fun. And I find that equally as fulfilling, if not more so. And so I think I got one more match to burn, and I plan on lighting it, burning the whole thing down this year. But yeah, and then I think I'm finished.
So how does it change your approach? Because you could view it as like, all right, it's just the last celebration of this 10-year chapter of your life. Go enjoy it, right? Or double middle fingers. Let's go. We got one more match to burn the mofo down.
Yeah, it's going to be the latter, because I'm competitive. I've always wanted to win. I've kind of carried myself with some false humility at times where it's like, oh no, I just want to go have fun and it doesn't matter. It's like, but no, you don't put in this work. You don't stay in it for this long if you don't have that kind of, edge where you want something more out of it than just a finish. And so, yeah, I think I know that I'm heading into this one, like, wanting to get the most out of myself, walking away, sometime in the afternoon, Saturday, in the plaza by the church, just being proud of what I did and knowing that, like, I can, like, sleep not wondering what if, because I think there were a lot of those years where I did drop out, where I regret dropping out because I know I could have finished, but because I had kind of a singular mindset on one thing and it wasn't going right in the moment, I just chose to kind of let my mind get the best of me and deteriorate and then give up. And so I don't want to walk away with any regrets from this year's race.
No, I'm just remembering last year being at Notre Dame de la Gorge after Lake Contamine, so roughly 21 miles into the race. And I believe from memory, you were at the front of the race with Jim, Germeau, Tom Evans, I think it was, going through Notre Dame, just ahead of Vincent and many others behind. Did last year's experience, and especially like kind of being aggressive and starting at the front and running with the guys, make you feel like you still belong in that front pack? I mean, you've just mentioned that you've changed, the field has changed, the sport has changed, this race has changed. But, you know, does it still feel like you belong in that pointy end?
That was a really important moment for me because it had been years since really like asserting myself towards the front. And last year, unfortunately, about 10 days out, I had fallen and broken a rib. And so I knew that my chances of finishing were low, but I wanted to go at least experience what I knew I was capable of doing. And so it was a reminder for the first, 40 miles or so of running with the front group, that this is where I belong. Even though the sport has changed and I've gotten older, I am still very capable. And I think it was a pivotal part for me psychologically, just to feel comfortable in that state, to be calm. And although my ultimate day came to an end in Courmayeur, I think that it really laid the framework for the next 365 days of intention, knowing that if I get back to the start line healthy and I'm in one piece, if I can keep that mindset, that's where I need to be. And that's where I had been back in 2016, 2017. So it was also enjoyable just to be out there with the guys again, because it kind of felt like I'd just been on the sideline for years.
Yeah. So then I guess pivoting and talking about the last 365, you haven't done that much in terms of competing and stuff. And we've now mentioned a few times to each other about like the importance of focusing on the race that matters most, that being UTMB. Talk about what you've been up to this season and how you've built intentionally towards your 10th and final race here at UTMB.
I'd love to say that it was uninterrupted and it was just like this great block, but the reality is I think the best block of training I had actually was going into Black Canyon, and I can't really explain what happened, but I just had a shit day out there. And then after that I felt like, it was just before my 40th birthday and I had a pretty good training block and I was feeling on top of the world, and I just thought, man, I'm going to take 40s by storm. And then like my body failed and I just like struggled with injuries for like 6 or 8 weeks. And so it was kind of a roller coaster over the last couple months. And it wasn't until really the last 7 weeks that I got into a rhythm where it really, kind of settled into like old school Tim training, where I was just doing laps of Mammoth Mountain, like at home with Lindsay, with Nacho, and in a really good groove. And then, so yeah, I think it's been a short but punchy build, and having the historical lifetime miles of really almost 20 years of uninterrupted training, I've kind of felt that I'm always within 5 or 6 weeks of peak fitness. And that's where I ended up over the last few weeks. And I did have a bit of a setback, in the last 10 days or so, but I'm chalking it up to like forced taper, and now the body feels good. And so, yeah, I'm excited to rip it. Yeah.
Well, we don't need to talk more about that, but what you said to me is the worst experience of my life. So
it was the worst 7 days of my life physically, and it really changed my perception of both time and pain. Where it was a health scare, and ended up in the ER and like bedbound for 6 days. But it basically, what I think I walked away with it is like, endurance sport is an opt-in type of pain, and you can opt out at any moment. But like when something, it was like I was on a roller coaster that had no exit, and it really kind of forced me to reframe my perception of time and pain. And I wouldn't have wanted it, but like it blasted new to take the the terminology of Courtney, like it blasted new holes in the pain cave that I didn't want to know existed, but it also kind of like, okay, like that's what actual pain is. Like when I've dropped out of races, it's because I'm either bored, I'm just, I'm getting complacent, and then just kind of like, I'm like, oh, this kind of is uncomfortable that I don't want to keep going. So it's more like I chose, but it's like, okay, that was real pain. And not that you can harness that and actually apply it to sport, but I think it does just highlight how much of a psychologic game we're in this. And pain is kind of a cortical phenomenon where if you can choose to compartmentalize it and keep going. And I know you and I in 2017 successfully did that to some, varying degrees, but that's where I want to end up. Yeah.
So, but you intentionally haven't raced. Like you could have jumped into any number of races. You could have gone to Lavareda or Eiger or anything. Why not? And how do you assess whether or not you're ready? I mean, is it just a feeling after 25 years of being a high level runner?
Yeah, the racing thing. I just didn't really have much interest in racing. And then I actually almost went out to Speed Goat for a little tune-up. But we ended up a really busy schedule back home, so I scrapped it. But I think it's more comparing to historical training and times. And so when I see like my final long run, like doing 4 laps of Mammoth Mountain up and down, it's I pulled a lot of confidence from that and unlike years past, it was married with actual intention with nutrition and hydration. And so I think I've just had enough little breadcrumbs of feedback that highlight that the body is ready. And as the mind has come around to mirror that, I know I'm ready for a good one. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you just arrived last night, and it feels to me like you're arriving later in a way like you did in those early days also. It felt intentional. I'm sure the audience would be interested to hear.
Yeah. I mean, so last year, 2024 was the first time I'd ever spent prolonged time here. I was here for 6 weeks and it was a really cool experience. Craft, we had a house and I was training with Ida and I really enjoyed it, but it also, I think I have always done better when I'm just home. I like my simple life with Lindsay. I really enjoy training in the Sierra. I think it's the best place that you could train and then, hardening my mind and my body with some classic routes that I do in Mammoth is something that I kind of, drifted away from over the years out of convenience. I just wasn't doing the same routes. And so this last block, I went back to it and that's, I find that showing up here, it's a business trip and I'm here 7 days out. There's not time to go frolic in the mountains and do cool things. It's just let's settle down, know that you're here for a reason and enjoy time with my loved ones and teammates and just get ready for, Friday at 5:30.
So then what are your goals here, Tim? To close the chapter on UTMB. I mean, I'm sure, of course, I'm sure you want to be competitive, but is there anything specific that you're channeling? Because I know you to be a thoughtful person who really thinks deeply about this kind of stuff. If you have to hold yourself accountable to the extent you want to share, what kind of goals do you have for yourself?
So I definitely, and it may be misplaced or it may be, I don't know, delusions of grandeur, but I still believe I could win this race. I still believe I can finish on the podium. And so that's what I've trained with intention of. I think as you and I have talked about, even some of my best years here, I didn't go in wanting to win. I went in for a top 5 aim, and then it opened the door to be successful when the rest of the field dismantled and fell apart. Yep. And so I haven't decided how I'm going to really approach the actual race yet, but it'll be somewhere in the middle there. And I ultimately want to walk away having closed the loop next Saturday, hopefully early afternoon, knowing that I gave myself a shot. I worked through the lows, I problem solved. And I think if I do that successfully, I can close this chapter on a 10-year journey with the race and know that I don't need to do anything more here. I mean, I don't need to do anything more here, but I want to do one more. And so that's where my head is right now, where I've accepted and I'm ready to kind of make that pack with the pain that's inevitable. And yeah, I think that, really coming away with something that I'm proud of is the ultimate goal. And I think that that's going to mean, a top 10 finish at minimum.
If you win the race, Tim,
Yeah.
let the record show, I will riot. We will be flipping cars. I will be shirtless hanging from the street lamps here in Chamonix. Things will be lit on fire. It will be obnoxious, terrible. I will be in prison for a long time, but it will be worth it.
We'll get tattoos.
We'll get tattoos for sure. All right, so I guess final thing before we let you go. Also in a month's time, you get to be an RD again, the continued growth of Mammoth Trail Fest this year, the Mammoth 200. Just say a few words about that before we close down.
That has aged me.
Yeah.
That's been a very big challenge that continues to throw wrenches into my life. But I think it's been a really neat way to explore expanding this new vocation that I've adopted into my life, and I'm really enjoying it. It's fulfilling. I spend more time thinking about that than anything personally in my running life. And I think that's a good kind of indication of like my path ahead in the sport, where I want to be, where my skills, where my intentions, my heart lie. And it's been fun to dream up and kind of create this new experience for runners. And then, on the back end of Trail Fest and in our 4th year, that's one thing I also love about UTMB is once I get through this, I just get to spend the next 3 and 4 weeks only focused on that. And creating an experience for another runner is just the best thing you could ever do in life.
Yeah. Well, maybe in closing, sharing a story with the audience. People will probably have forgotten at this point, but in 2017, you and I ran like 40 miles of this race together. You went on to finish 3rd. I faded back to 7th. The one that got away for me is also just like, though, a highlight of my career. Like the moment that I remember specifically is going up Grand Col with you.
Yep.
Still dark out, coming to the top. My hands are frozen, struggling to get my poles broken down. All of a sudden, I don't see you, and I assumed you were behind me. And by the time we got down to La Folie, they're like, yeah, Tim's got 5 minutes on you. I'm like, what? Tim's got 5 minutes? I thought he was behind me. And I worked my ass off to get back up close to you, which I did on the Bovine climb. And then you put 7 minutes on me in the descent to Trient, and I arrived like, no way, that's not possible. And then all of a sudden, Jim Walmsley's on top of me. Xavier Thevenard's on top of me. Pau Capel's on top of me. I'm going backwards, but you got another podium.
That was such a wild year. And like we talked about in our little preview show, it was one that no one dropped.
Yeah.
You would assume if you just stayed in the race, you could have moved up 3-4 places like you always do. Yeah. Not a single elite man dropped that year. Yeah. It was insane.
So from memory, the men's top 10 was Francois, Killian, Tim, Xavier, Pau.
Jim was 5th.
Oh, yeah. So after Xavier was Jim, then Pau in 6th, me in 7th, Zach in 8th, Gediminas Grinius in 9th, and Jordi Gamito in 10th.
Yep.
That was a year.
And Laney was 14th.
Yeah.
Like, it was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll never forget. That was one, running with you and trying to troubleshoot your poles, trying to, get the button to press in and extend. The wild times, but
great memories.
It is.
We'll go have a great loop for the both of us this weekend.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tim.